Maid's daughter warned a tycoon of bankruptcy. Her advice prevented collapse. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's dive into today's story. Imagine you've built a massive empire from the ground up, with luxury offices in New York, a private mansion in the Hamptons, and an influence that stretches across industries. You've earned your fortune through years of hard work, sacrifices, and strategic decisions. Everything seems perfect, right? But sometimes, no matter how big your empire is, a small mistake can bring it all crashing down. This was the reality for Jonathan Reed, a self-made billionaire and owner of Reed Enterprises, one of the most influential tech companies in the country. His empire was vast, his wealth immeasurable, but behind the glimmer of success, Reed was struggling. His company was in deep financial trouble. He had made risky investments that were not paying off. His advisors told him that everything was under control, but the numbers didn't lie. The debts were piling up, the cash flow was thinning, and the situation was getting desperate. Despite his power and influence, Reed found himself in a corner, unable to see a way out. Enter Emily, a quiet and observant 10-year-old girl. Emily was the daughter of Sarah, Reed's housekeeper. She spent most of her time in the mansion, keeping to herself and quietly observing the world around her. Unlike the busy executives and powerful businessmen who walked through the mansion's grand hallways, Emily wasn't concerned with stock prices or board meetings. She was more focused on the small, meaningful things, like the way her mother worked tirelessly to make sure everything ran smoothly in the house. But one day, while cleaning the library, Emily overheard something that caught her attention. Reed was speaking to his financial team, frustrated and worried about the company's future. "If we don't turn things around in the next quarter, we'll be bankrupt," he said, his voice heavy with stress. The words bankrupt and collapse echoed in her mind. She knew enough to understand what that meant. Emily had seen her mother stress over money, had watched her struggle to make ends meet. She knew how fragile financial stability could be. Over the next few days, as she continued to observe, Emily noticed something unusual. Reed was ignoring key red flags. He was relying too heavily on the advice of his top executives, many of whom were too scared to speak up. Emily, however, could see things from a different perspective. She wasn't bogged down by company jargon or overcomplicated financial reports. She simply saw the truth. Reed was heading towards a financial disaster. One afternoon, while Sarah was busy in the kitchen, Emily found herself in the study, alone with Reed. He was pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. Without thinking, Emily blurted out, "Mr. Reed, you're making a mistake. You need to stop relying on those investments. They're going to ruin you." Reed froze, staring at her in disbelief. The room went silent for a moment. Emily, feeling a mixture of nervousness and determination, continued, "I've heard you talk about your company and the risks you've taken. I know you think it's all going to work out, but it won't. You're not listening to the right people." Reed's eyes narrowed, his disbelief turning into skepticism. "And who exactly do you think should I listen to, little girl?" he asked, his voice tinged with amusement. Emily didn't flinch. "You need to trust people who understand the numbers, the ones who don't have their own interests at heart. You're too focused on growth and expansion, but your foundation is crumbling," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. Reed stood still for a moment, considering her words. Was this really the advice of a 10-year-old girl, or was it the truth he had been too blind to see? He didn't know it yet, but Emily had just delivered the most valuable advice he'd ever receive. As the days passed after Emily's bold warning, the tension in Reed Enterprises continued to build. Jonathan Reed, still skeptical of the young girl's advice, tried to brush off her words as nothing more than childish chatter. But deep down, something gnawed at him. He couldn't shake the thought that perhaps she had seen something he hadn't. He began to review the company's financial statements again, this time with a different perspective, trying to find the flaw that had eluded him for so long. The numbers were there, clear as day, his investments in risky tech startups, his aggressive expansion strategy. All of it was putting the company in jeopardy. The debts were staggering, and with no way to pay them off, Bankruptcy loomed ever closer. Reed had always prided himself on being able to outsmart the system, but this time, he was losing the game. He found himself in his office late one night, staring at a massive spreadsheet, the rows of red ink and negative figures blurring before his eyes. The weight of his failure pressed down on him. It wasn't just about money. It was about his legacy, his name. It was about the empire he had spent decades building from nothing. His thoughts drifted back to Emily, the maid's daughter, and her calm, steady voice. "You're making a mistake," she had said. At that moment, Reed realized she might have been the only one willing to tell him the truth. He had ignored her, dismissed her advice as the ramblings of a child, but now he saw the wisdom in her words. The very next morning, Reed made a decision that would change the course of his business. He called in his financial advisors and told them to lay everything out on the table. No more hiding behind vague projections or optimistic forecasts. He needed a clear picture of the company's financial health, no matter how ugly it was. "It's time to face the truth," he said, his voice firm but weary. His advisors were hesitant at first, but they soon understood the gravity of the situation. Reed listened as they outlined the risks, the failed investments, the mismanagement. For the first time in a long while, Reed wasn't the one talking. He wasn't the one in control. He was the one who needed help. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. He had ignored the signs, trusted the wrong people, and allowed his pride to cloud his judgment. Emily's words had been a wake-up call, a reminder that sometimes the answers are right in front of you, and you just have to be willing to listen. As the meeting ended, Reed felt a sense of relief, but also a deep sense of shame. He had come close to losing everything because he had refused to see what was right in front of him. But there was still hope. With a renewed sense of determination, Reed set out to turn things around. He restructured his investments, started listening to the voices he had ignored for so long, and began making the difficult decisions that would save his company from collapse. It wasn't going to be easy, and it wasn't going to happen overnight, but Reed was finally ready to face the challenges ahead. Meanwhile, Emily remained in the background, unaware of the profound impact she had had on the man who had once dismissed her as just another child. She continued to watch the world around her, silently observing and quietly offering her wisdom when it was needed most. She had saved Reed Enterprises without even realizing it, proving that sometimes the most valuable insights come from the most unlikely sources. The path ahead for Reed was uncertain, but one thing was clear: he had learned a valuable lesson. In business, as in life, the ability to listen is more powerful than the ability to talk. And sometimes, the greatest wisdom comes from those we least expect. As the weeks passed, Jonathan Reed's company, Reed Enterprises, began to show signs of improvement. The once looming shadow of bankruptcy started to fade as he made decisive moves to restructure the company's finances. He had listened to the advice of his financial advisors, reined in his risky investments, and adjusted his strategy. Slowly but surely, the numbers began to turn around. But Reed knew that his actions alone wouldn't be enough to secure the future of his empire. The changes he had made were significant, but they lacked the human element, the one thing he had overlooked for so long. As Reed pondered his next steps, his thoughts kept drifting back to Emily, the maid's daughter, and her insightful warning. She had seen the truth when no one else had. Her words had been a wake-up call, and Reed realized that his success wasn't just about making the right business decisions. It was about recognizing and nurturing the potential in people, no matter their background. Emily had reminded him of something he had long forgotten: the importance of humility and the power of listening. It was a lesson he needed to carry forward. Reed decided to take action. He called for a meeting with his senior leadership team, but this time, he had a different approach in mind. He wanted to create a company culture where everyone's voice mattered, where even the most junior employee could speak up and make a difference. "We've been focusing too much on the numbers," Reed began, looking around the room at the faces of his executives, "and not enough on the people who make this company what it is. We need to change that." His executives exchanged curious glances, unsure of what Reed was about to propose. "We are going to listen," Reed continued, "to everyone. We will open up channels of communication and ensure that every voice, no matter how small, is heard." As he spoke, Reed couldn't help but think of Emily. Her small voice had been the key to saving the company, and he was determined to ensure that others, like her, would never feel invisible again. The meeting set the stage for a cultural transformation at Reed Enterprises. Over the following months, the company implemented new policies to encourage open dialogue at all levels. Employees were encouraged to share their ideas, concerns, and suggestions, regardless of their position. It wasn't an easy transition. Change never is. But Reed was committed to the process, and he could see the positive effects ripple through the company. Employee morale improved, productivity soared, and the company's reputation started to shift. Reed Enterprises wasn't just another tech giant anymore. It was a place where people mattered. Meanwhile, Emily remained as humble as ever. She continued to help her mother with the daily chores around the mansion, unaware of the lasting impact her words had had on Reed. She was still the same quiet, observant girl who had never sought attention. But Reed knew that without her, his company and his life might have taken a very different path. As he sat in his office late one night, looking at the now stabilized financial reports, Reed thought back to that moment when Emily had spoken up. He smiled to himself, grateful for the lesson she had taught him. Sometimes, the smallest voice can make the biggest difference. And sometimes, the greatest wisdom comes from those we least expect. Months had passed since the changes began at Reed Enterprises, and the results were undeniable. The company was no longer on the brink of financial ruin. In fact, it had entered a new phase of growth, one that was driven not just by profit margins, but by the culture Reed had worked so hard to instill. Jonathan Reed had transformed, and so had his company. Yet, despite the success, Reed felt something was still missing. There was one person who had sparked this change, but who remained oblivious to her impact. Emily, the maid's daughter. He hadn't seen her much since the meeting where he had first listened to her advice. But he had thought about her often, reflecting on how a simple, heartfelt warning had saved his empire. It was a cold December morning when Reed decided it was time to finally thank her. He called Sarah, his housekeeper, and asked if Emily could meet him. Sarah, though still a bit unsure about the whole situation, agreed, and later that afternoon, Emily was brought to Reed's office. She entered the room quietly, as always, her head down and her hands clasped in front of her. Reed looked up from his desk, a mixture of gratitude and humility on his face. Emily, he began, his voice steady but sincere. I owe you more than I could ever express. If it weren't for you, this company, everything I've built, would have collapsed. Your advice saved me, and it saved Reed Enterprises. Emily blinked, clearly surprised by the attention. She had never expected any recognition for her words, let alone a personal meeting with the man whose life she had unknowingly changed. I don't understand, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I was just trying to help. I didn't think it would matter so much. Reed smiled softly, walking around his desk to stand in front of her. It mattered more than you'll ever know, he said, placing a hand gently on her shoulder. Sometimes the truth is right in front of us, but we're too focused on our own pride or our own plans to see it. You opened my eyes, and that's something I'll never forget. Emily, though overwhelmed, felt a warmth in her chest. She had always believed that the world was full of people who ignored the small voices, like hers. But now, in this quiet moment with Reed, she understood that her voice had power. It was not just a whisper in the wind. It had made a real difference. Thank you, she said simply, unsure of what else to say. Reed looked at her, his expression thoughtful. I want to do something for you, Emily. I want to make sure you have every opportunity to succeed, just like you helped me succeed. If you ever want to attend a university, I'll personally make sure you have a scholarship. If you want to pursue a career in business, I'll mentor you. You've shown me that you have the kind of insight that's rare, and I want to help you nurture it. Emily's eyes widened in disbelief. She had never imagined anything like this. Her family had always struggled to make ends meet, and the thought of going to college, let alone having a mentor, seemed like a distant dream. But here was Reed, offering her the chance to change the course of her life. She didn't know what to say, but her heart swelled with gratitude. I don't know what to say, she stammered, her voice shaky with emotion. Reed gave her a reassuring smile. You don't have to say anything. I just want you to know that your future is in your hands now. You've already shown that you're capable of so much. Now it's time to take those talents and make them yours. With those words, Reed felt a weight lift off his shoulders. He had been so focused on his empire, on his business, that he had neglected the most important part of success, the people. Emily had reminded him of that, and for that, he would always be grateful. As Emily left his office that day, she felt a sense of possibility she had never known before. She had always kept her dreams small, thinking that people like her could never have more than what they already had. But now, thanks to Reid, she could see a future that was bright and full of promise. It was a future that, for the first time, felt within her reach. Months went by, and Reid Enterprises continued to flourish under Jonathan Reid's new leadership. The company's fortunes had turned around, and with every passing day, the lessons Reid had learned from Emily became more ingrained in his decisions. His business practices had shifted, yes, but so had his personal values. He now took a deep interest in the lives of his employees, understanding that true success wasn't just measured in profit, but in the people who helped build the empire. As for Emily, her life was beginning to take on new dimensions. With Reid's offer of a scholarship, she had enrolled in a university and was diving headfirst into her studies, excited by the opportunities ahead. It was a world she had never imagined, one where doors were opening that she hadn't even known existed. The first few weeks were a blur of lectures, textbooks, and the fast-paced life of a college student. Emily thrived in this new environment, gaining confidence in her abilities and finding a sense of purpose she had never felt before. However, despite her excitement, she never lost sight of her roots. She remained grounded, always remembering the lessons her mother had taught her about hard work and humility. Reid, on the other hand, had become more of a mentor than just a benefactor. He would check in with Emily regularly, not just about her studies, but about her personal growth. He knew that the young girl he had once dismissed as invisible had the potential to change the world. One day, a few months into her studies, Reid invited Emily to a corporate gala, a yearly event that celebrated the company's achievements. Emily had never imagined she would be a part of such an event, and the thought of attending felt surreal. When she arrived at the gala, she was overwhelmed by the grandeur of it all. The venue was stunning, a high-rise hotel overlooking the skyline, and the guests were the wealthiest and most powerful people in the city. Reid greeted her with a warm smile as he introduced her to various colleagues and business partners. Emily felt out of place, but Reid made sure she felt welcomed, treating her with the same respect he showed everyone else. As the night wore on, Emily found herself deep in conversation with one of Reid's senior executives. The executive, a sharp woman in her 40s, asked her about her goals and ambitions. Emily, still unsure of herself in this world, shared her desire to eventually help people through business and innovation. "You're already doing that," the executive said. "You don't have to wait until you're older or more established. You've got the right mindset, and you've already shown that you're capable of making a real difference. Just keep that focus." The conversation stayed with Emily long after the event ended. For the first time, she truly understood the power of her own voice and the importance of speaking up. She had already made an impact on Reid Enterprises, and now, she was beginning to understand how she could use her education and talents to shape the world around her. In the weeks that followed, Emily's vision of her future grew clearer. She realized that her potential wasn't limited by her background or her circumstances. With the right opportunities, hard work, and support, she could achieve anything. As she finished her first year at university, Emily received an unexpected call from Reid. "I've been following your progress," he said, "and I've been so impressed. I want to invite you to join Reid Enterprises as an intern this summer. You've got the skills and the drive, and I think you'd be a great addition to the team." Emily was speechless. It was an opportunity she had never dreamed possible, and it made her realize just how far she had come. What began as a simple warning to a struggling billionaire had set in motion a series of events that would change both their lives forever. Emily knew she was just getting started, but for the first time in her life, she believed in her own potential. As the summer internship began, Emily found herself stepping into a new world, a world that, just months ago, had seemed impossible to her. The transition from university life to working at Reid Enterprises was overwhelming at first. She was assigned to a team that handled market research, a department where she could use both her analytical skills and her growing knowledge from her studies. The work was challenging, but it was also rewarding. Emily quickly impressed her supervisors with her ability to think critically and solve problems in creative ways. She wasn't just a student anymore. She was becoming a valued member of the team. Her unique perspective, shaped by her upbringing and her time spent observing, brought fresh ideas to the table. She began to see how her knowledge could be applied to real-world situations, and she realized just how much potential she had to make an impact. As the weeks passed, Reed watched Emily's progress closely. He had always seen something special in her, but now it was undeniable. Her confidence was growing, and so was her influence within the company. He invited her to join more senior meetings, where she was encouraged to contribute her thoughts. At first, Emily was nervous, but Reed's belief in her gave her the courage to speak up. One afternoon, during a critical strategy meeting, Emily was asked for her opinion on a new product launch. The room went silent as everyone turned to her. She took a deep breath, remembering all the times she had doubted herself in the past. But now, she had the knowledge and the support to speak her truth. "I think we should focus more on customer feedback," Emily began, her voice steady but strong. "We've done a lot of market research, but the true value comes from understanding how people are reacting to the product in real time. We need to engage with our consumers more directly and adjust our approach based on their input." The room was quiet for a moment, and then Reed, who had been listening intently, nodded in agreement. "That's a great point, Emily," he said. "We need to take action on that." As the meeting continued, Emily realized that her ideas were being taken seriously. She had gone from a quiet observer to someone whose voice mattered in a room full of powerful people. This shift was more than just a career milestone for Emily. It was a validation of everything she had been working toward. The summer flew by, and by the time it ended, Emily had made a lasting impression. Reed, recognizing her growth, offered her a full-time position at Reed Enterprises after graduation. Emily was overjoyed, but she also knew that this was just the beginning. She had come a long way from the shy, uncertain girl who had once worked quietly in the background. Now, she was stepping into her own, ready to take on the world. As she walked out of the office that day, she thought back to the very first time she had spoken up to Reed, warning him about the company's financial struggles. She never could have imagined how that one moment would change her life, or how much impact her voice would have in the years to come. Reed Enterprises had given her the opportunity of a lifetime. But more importantly, it had taught her that no matter where you come from, you have the power to shape your own destiny. For Emily, the future was full of limitless possibilities, and she was finally ready to embrace them. As the months went by, Emily's career at Reed Enterprises flourished, and she continued to prove herself in ways that surprised even the most seasoned executives. The quiet, observant girl who had once worked in the background was now making waves in the business world, offering fresh ideas and perspectives that often led to breakthroughs in company strategy. Reed, who had been her mentor from the beginning, watched her transformation with pride. He had always known that Emily had immense potential, but now it was clear that she was destined for even greater things. One day, Reed called Emily into his office for a private meeting. She was nervous, not knowing what to expect. He greeted her with a warm smile, motioning for her to sit. "I've been following your progress closely, Emily," he began, his tone genuine. "Your work has been exceptional, and I think it's time for you to take on a more significant role." Emily was taken aback. She had never imagined that this day would come so soon. "What do you mean?" she asked, her voice filled with uncertainty. Reed leaned forward, his eyes steady and confident. "I want you to lead one of our new initiatives," he said. "We're launching a project to expand our reach into international markets, and I believe you're the perfect person to take charge." Emily's heart raced. Leading such an important project was a huge responsibility, but it also felt like the culmination of everything she had worked toward. She had come from a place of uncertainty and self-doubt to a position where Reed trusted her to steer the company in a new direction. "I don't know if I'm ready," she admitted, though deep down, she knew this was the chance of a lifetime. Reed smiled reassuringly. "You've been ready for a long time, Emily. You have the skills, the knowledge, and the drive. You just needed to trust in yourself, like I've always trusted in you." Emily took a deep breath, her mind racing. She had never thought of herself as someone who could lead, but Reed's faith in her gave her the courage to step up. She agreed to take on the role, and just like that, a new chapter in her journey began. Over the next few weeks, Emily threw herself into the project with everything she had. She worked closely with a team of talented individuals, combining her deep understanding of consumer behavior with her innovative ideas to craft a strategy that would elevate Reed Enterprises to new heights. There were challenges along the way, language barriers, cultural differences, and unexpected obstacles in each market they entered. But Emily's determination and ability to think on her feet kept the team moving forward. As the project progressed, Emily gained more confidence. She found herself speaking at international conferences, representing Reed Enterprises in front of an audience of business leaders and investors. Her voice, once timid and uncertain, now carried authority and vision. Emily was no longer just the maid's daughter who had offered a word of advice to a billionaire. She was now a leader in her own right, shaping the future of a global enterprise. One evening, as she was reviewing the final reports on the success of their international expansion, Emily sat back in her chair and reflected on how far she had come. She thought about the time when she had been just a quiet observer in the mansion, never imagining that her voice could make a difference. Now, her voice was the one leading others. Reed had been right all along. Sometimes, the most powerful voices come from the most unexpected places. She had proved to herself, and to the world, that no matter where you start, with hard work, belief in yourself, and the courage to take risks, you can achieve greatness. Emily smiled to herself, knowing that this was only the beginning. As the months passed, Emily's success story continued to unfold, and Reed Enterprises was growing stronger than ever. Emily's leadership in the international expansion project had not only led the company to new markets, but also established her as a formidable force within the business world. She had risen from being the maid's daughter to becoming one of the most respected young leaders in the company. But as the company continued to prosper, Emily's journey was far from over. One morning, as she sat in her office reviewing market data, Reed came to her with another opportunity, one that would challenge her in ways she had never imagined. "Emily," he said with a smile, "I've been thinking a lot about the future of Reed Enterprises, and I want you to take on a new role. I want you to oversee our innovation department. You've proven time and time again that you have the insight to lead, and I believe this is the next step for you." Emily's heart skipped a beat. She had always been intrigued by innovation and technology, and now, Reed was offering her the chance to guide the company's future in this crucial area. "I'm honored," Emily said, her voice steady despite the excitement building inside her. "But it's a huge responsibility." Reed nodded. "I know, but I believe in you, Emily. I always have." With Reed's trust and encouragement, Emily took on the challenge of overseeing the innovation department. She quickly got to work, diving deep into the latest trends in technology, market demands, and consumer behavior. She surrounded herself with the best and brightest minds in the industry, bringing together a team of engineers, designers, and strategists to help push Reed Enterprises into the future. Emily's days became filled with brainstorming sessions, prototype testing, and endless hours of collaboration. But she thrived under the pressure. She had learned how to lead with confidence, how to listen to others, and how to make bold decisions that could shape the future of the company. As the months went by, the innovation department began to make waves. Emily's team developed new products that revolutionized the way consumers interacted with technology, and soon, Reed Enterprises was seen as a leader in the tech world. Emily's vision, combined with her ability to inspire her team, had created a culture of creativity and forward thinking that propelled the company to new heights. But with success came new challenges. The pressure to keep innovating, to stay ahead of the competition, and to maintain the company's growth weighed heavily on Emily. There were moments of doubt, moments when she questioned if she was truly ready for the massive responsibility she had taken on. But every time she felt overwhelmed, she thought back to her humble beginnings. She thought about the time she had spoken up to Reed, offering a simple but powerful piece of advice that had saved the company. She remembered the way Reed had trusted her, the way he had given her the opportunity to prove herself. That trust fueled her, reminding her that she had already overcome so much. One day, after a particularly challenging meeting, Emily sat alone in her office, reflecting on everything she had accomplished. She had gone from a quiet girl in the background to a leader at the forefront of Reed Enterprises' future. She had come so far, but she knew there was still so much more to do. As she looked out of her office window at the city below, Emily smiled to herself. She had worked hard, she had persevered, and she had earned her place. But more importantly, She had learned that the key to success wasn't just about making the right decisions or achieving great things. It was about staying true to yourself, never losing sight of your values, and always believing in your own potential. Emily had proven that no matter where you come from, no matter what obstacles you face, you can rise to the top and make a difference. And as she moved forward, she knew that her journey was far from over. Years passed, and Reed Enterprises continued to soar, propelled not only by Emily's innovations, but also by the unwavering trust and dedication she had built within the company. Emily had fully embraced her role as the head of the innovation department, constantly pushing boundaries and inspiring others to think outside the box. Her vision had helped transform the company into one of the most respected names in the industry, known not only for its groundbreaking products, but also for its commitment to employee empowerment and creativity. But even as her professional life flourished, Emily remained grounded. She never forgot the roots that had shaped her, the quiet girl who once worked behind the scenes in a mansion, unseen and unheard, until her words had changed everything. She remembered the lessons her mother had taught her about hard work, humility, and kindness. As she stood in the boardroom one afternoon, discussing the latest advancements with her team, she looked around at the faces of the people who had supported her and helped her along the way. She had come a long way from that first day she had spoken up to Reed, warning him about the company's looming financial collapse. That single moment had set in motion a chain of events that had not only saved the company, but had also changed the trajectory of her life. It was hard to believe how much had changed in such a short period. Emily had gone from being an outsider to one of the most influential figures in the company. She had earned the respect of her colleagues, and more importantly, she had gained a deep understanding of her own worth. She had learned that success wasn't just about being the smartest person in the room. It was about resilience, empathy, and the willingness to take risks and challenge the status quo. One evening, as Emily walked out of the office after a long day, she took a moment to reflect on everything she had achieved. She thought about her journey, from the quiet moments of doubt to the loud moments of triumph. She thought about Reed, the man who had given her a chance when no one else believed in her. And she thought about the countless people who had helped her along the way, the mentors, the teammates, and even the friends who had supported her through every challenge. She realized that her success was not just hers alone. It had been shaped by the people who had believed in her when she didn't believe in herself. It had been shaped by the community that had rallied around her, offering guidance and encouragement at every turn. Emily knew that she had much more to give, much more to accomplish. But for the first time in her life, she felt content. She had found her purpose. She had found her place in the world, not because of the title she held or the accolades she had earned, but because of the impact she had made on her company, on the people around her, and on herself. As she stood at the window of her office, looking out over the city that had become her home, she smiled. The road ahead was still long, but Emily knew one thing for sure. She was ready for whatever came next. And no matter where life took her, she would always remember the lesson that had started it all, that the smallest voice, when spoken with conviction, could change the world. In this inspiring journey of overcoming adversity, a young girl rises from humble beginnings to change the fate of a struggling billionaire. This millionaire story unfolds with a powerful twist, showcasing how a single, small voice can save a business empire. Follow this millionaire story as a maid's daughter offers her invaluable advice, preventing a financial collapse that could have destroyed everything. Through determination, growth, and self-belief, she not only saves the company, but also secures her own future. This millionaire story highlights the importance of listening, the power of humility, and the untapped potential in the most unexpected places. As this millionaire story unfolds, it reveals that true success is not just about wealth, but the relationships we build and the lives we impact. A tale of success against the odds, this millionaire story demonstrates that no matter where you start, with the right mindset, you can rise to the top. Discover how a simple warning from a young girl became the turning point for an entire empire, as this millionaire story continues to inspire those who believe in the power of perseverance and opportunity.